In a remote village in central Java, nestled between dense forests and mist-covered hills, there stood a small, old house. This house belonged to an elderly woman named Siti, widowed and childless. Siti was a recluse, living alone with only her memories to keep her company. The villagers whispered about her, saying that she had been cursed by Wewe Gombel, a malevolent spirit who preyed on children and the lonely. Wewe Gombel was said to be the ghost of a woman who, after a tragic loss, had taken her own life in despair. Her soul, filled with bitterness, could not rest, and she became a vengeful spirit, seeking to steal the happiness of others. One particularly dark and stormy night, the wind howled through the trees, and the rain fell in sheets, pounding the rooftops like a drum. Siti sat alone in her dimly lit home, her kerosene lamp flickering as the storm raged outside. She was accustomed to the solitude, but that night, something felt different. Oppressive presence seemed to fill the air. As the hours passed, Siti began to hear strange noises outside her window. At first, she dismissed them as the wind or the creaking of old wood. But then she heard it, a faint, eerie laugh, almost like that of a child, but twisted and unnatural. It echoed through the house, sending shivers down her spine. Siti's heart pounded in her chest as she stood up and peered out the window. But all she could see was darkness. The laugh came again, this time closer, as if it were inside the house. Fear gripped her as she turned to see a shadowy figure standing in the corner of the room. The figure was hunched and gaunt, with long, tangled hair covering its face. Its eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, and its bony fingers extended towards Siti. She realized with horror that this was no ordinary spirit. This was Wewe Gombel herself, come to claim another victim, in a voice that seemed to come from the depths of the grave. Wewe Gombel spoke, "I am here to take what you have lost, to fill the void in my heart with your suffering." Siti backed away, her hands trembling as she grasped the rosary beads she always carried with her. She began to pray, her voice quivering with fear. But Wewe Gombel only laughed, a sound so cold and hollow it seemed to freeze the very air. "You cannot escape me, old woman," the spirit hissed. "You are as alone as I once was, and now you will join me in my eternal torment." With a final, desperate plea, Siti hurled the rosary at the ghost. The beads shattered against the wall, and for a moment, Wewe Gombel seemed to waver, her form flickering like a dying flame. But the respite was brief, and the spirit advanced once more. In that moment, Siti's fear turned to anger. She had lived too long, endured too much, to be taken by this vengeful spectre. With a defiant cry, she grabbed the kerosene lamp and hurled it at Wewe Gombel. The lamp exploded in a burst of fire, engulfing the spirit in flames. Wewe Gombel screamed, a sound so horrific it echoed through the entire village. The flames consumed her, and with one final wail, she vanished into the darkness, leaving nothing but smoke and the smell of burnt hair behind. Siti collapsed to the floor, exhausted but victorious. The storm outside began to subside, and the oppressive presence lifted. The villagers, hearing the commotion, rushed to her house, only to find her lying unconscious but alive amidst the charred remains of the room. When Ember City awoke the next day, she told the villagers what had happened. They listened in awe and fear, for they knew the legend of Wewe Gombel well. But they also knew that Ember City had faced the spirit and survived a feat few could claim. From that day on, Ember City was no longer feared by the villagers, but respected. They saw her as a protector, someone who had faced the darkness and lived to tell the tale. And as for Wewe Gombel, her presence in the village was never felt again. But still, on stormy nights, when the wind howled and the rain pounded on the rooftops, the villagers would huddle close to their fires and remember the night. Wewe Gombel command was defeated,